Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our meeting number 12 for Agricultural Affairs Committee, April 4 this morning. What a beautiful morning to be here. It was an amazing drive to get here. We'd like to thank all the city staff and the plow operator that they work overnight to keep the road clean. So for us to be able to be here. So welcome to the people in the gallery and the people online. So before we start the meeting, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that this meeting is being held on unceded Anishinaabe-Algonquin territory. The people of the Anishinaabe-Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. I'd like to ask Kelly to do roll call, please.
Councillor Brown,
Here.
Councillor Kitts. Here. Councillor Lulov,
Je suis présent.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Present.
and Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you. I also like to welcome my colleague Wilson Lowe to be here with us in the gallery this morning. Let's give him a big welcome, make him feel welcome at the Rural Affairs Committee. Thank you very much, Councillor, for being here with us this morning. 3.1 ERAC minute 11, Thursday, March 7, 2024. Is that carried?
Carried.
Thank you. We have a response to inquiry, but I heard from some of my colleagues, we want to hold it. For us to hold it, we have a motion, procedural motion. Councilor Clark Kelly, can you please read it for us?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That pursuant to subsection 89(3) of the procedure bylaw, being bylaw, whatever, the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee approved that the rule of procedure be suspended to allow for consideration of the items listed as responses to inquiry, ARAC 2024-01 warranted traffic signals and funding. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll come back to this one. Number 5.1, we have Rural Summit update and presentation. We have Stefan Galibo here, but we're gonna wait. We're gonna hold it till after. Thanks, Stefan. Number 6.1, we also have Rural Building Grant Program. We're gonna hold that one. We have additional item. Councillor Brown has a motion for Georgia Falls Trust Fund allocation. So, Mr. Councillor Brown, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. That the following motion be added to the agenda pursuant to subsection 89, paragraph 3 of the procedure bylaw, such that it may rise to council quickly in order to accommodate for early planting season, perhaps not today, Chair. Whereas the Georgina Falls Trust Fund was established for the purposes of funding improvements to the Manotick Arena and Centennial Park, and whereas bylaw 85-92 of the former Rideau Township governs the administration of this trust, and whereas in accordance with the bylaw, the amount expended from the trust shall be limited to the interest earned, and the fund shall not be reduced to less than the bequeathed amount of $65,628. And whereas Financial Services has confirmed that the trust has a current balance of $70,651.64, therefore be it resolved that City Council approve an allocation from the trust fund of $2,500 to the Manotick Community Parks and Recreation Association for landscaping improvements at the Manotick Arena, and be it further resolved that the General Manager of Recreation, Culture and Facility Services be delegated to approve further allocations from the trust fund that are in compliance with its intended uses and with the concurrence of the Ward 21 Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any question? Seeing none, is that motion carried?
Carried.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you.
And number 7, we have no in-camera item, and I just want to hit number 8. We have a small IPD, and just for information only, Planning, Real Estate and Economy Development Department 2023 Delegate Authority Report. So thank you for that. And now we're going to go back to our agenda. So we do have 4.1. We have some question to staff, and we have Karina Douglas is on the line with us. Good morning, Karina. Hopefully, I can see you here on the screen if I could.
Good morning, Chair. I was just promoted as a panelist. Thank
Don't
you.
worry. Thank you. Good morning, Karina. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. I have counsel at the Agricultural Affairs Committee. Have a few questions for you. So we're going to start probably with Councilor Brown.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, Karina. I appreciate you attending committee today. Based on the information that we received at the last ARAC committee meeting that Councillor Drews put forward, some of the concerns that we've heard from not only members of this committee, but members of the public is the length of time that some of these intersections have been stuck on the list. Recognizing that the list evolves, it changes over time as new locations are warranted. So the list does get longer over time. It's not finite. How do we move forward on some of these projects and recognizing that some of the warrants are lower in the rural area? And I appreciate that, but it doesn't seem to move them forward. So how can we make measurable improvements and actually complete some of the work that's on this through this program for the projects on this list?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Chair. I see we have some people from traffic that can probably help me a little bit with the answer. From an infrastructure services perspective, we received the project from our clients in traffic services that are the ones that put together the list of priority. I see Heidi has turned her camera on. Right now, from the list that is included in the response, we have 3 projects under design with infrastructure services. We do have funding for design until funding for construction is approved by the budget that traffic is putting through. And we do have a project on the shelf that I know has been a lot of discussions around, which is the Eagleson and Fluellen intersection that has been designed and it is waiting for construction funding. So maybe I'm not sure if it's Heidi or Kathy that can speak to the systems that we have in place to prioritize and how those decisions are made and the funding is coming to us.
Yes,
Oh,
good
thank you very
morning.
much.
Oops, sorry.
Go ahead, Kathy.
My apologies. Sorry. Good morning. Through you, Chair, I can add to Karina's response just in terms of our program. So basically, within our program, we work within the allocated capital funding for the new traffic control devices program to advance locations to construction. So within the funding that we receive, we have developed a prioritization system that allows us to address the locations where the concerns are the highest and where the need is there the most to address issues such as collisions and high volumes. So we work within our funding envelope to continually progress intersections towards construction. There are a number of steps involved once a location does meet the warrants for a traffic signal and is added to the priority list. So the first step is to conduct a functional design study, which typically takes from 6 months to a year. It involves an assessment of the appropriate traffic control device, whether a roundabout or a traffic signal is appropriate. It also involves a public consultation phase and a review of property requirements. Those functional design studies are done within our team in traffic services. And as Karina mentioned, once we complete the functional design stage, we hand over the projects to infrastructure services for preliminary and detailed design. Oftentimes we allocate funding towards the design, but we're still saving up over a number of years to have sufficient funding to bring the sites to construction.
Well, thank you very much. I guess the concern that I have is simply the amount of funding for the need. Based on the information we received last month, if you only took the 19 locations in rural Ottawa, it would take 24 years to complete all of those projects. And that's if no other projects get on the list that would receive a higher warranted, I guess, funding allocation. And so my question, and I don't know if it's best addressed to you or somebody in finance services, but is there a conversation that we should be having at this committee and council about allocating additional resources? Because taking 24 years to complete 19 locations doesn't seem reasonable, and that's not including the 17 locations that are currently on the list for urban Ottawa. So do we need to talk about a serious funding allocation so we can move forward in a way that the public actually sees some progress being made?
Yeah, so this may be a greater question for with our financial services team. We don't decide the budget envelopes that we get every year. Those are dictated to us, and then therefore we have to prioritize our projects within that, recognizing that this program in particular has had a long queue. There has been funding identified through the Road Safety Action Plan to help supplement it. We foresee that continuing as well in the future years, and as was described in the inquiry, we anticipate additional resources happening through through those programs that should be able to help us supplement this program even further. But we don't. We work within the budget envelopes that are provided to us.
Nope, thank you very much. And I think moving forward, that's a conversation that I certainly would like to have, and I think my colleagues as well. So I appreciate staff taking the time to attend today. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Next will be Councillor Clark Kelly.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Brown for bringing this forward and for his comments, which I do agree with. And this might not be true, but the way I interpreted what I just heard, it did sound like it was a bit conflicting. So you're talking about, Kathy was talking about, funding envelopes for design and looking at the various intersections or what tools we would use. And then I believe, Kathy, you used the term saving money for those projects, is what I heard you say. So, but then Heidi talked about not having funding at all. So I just was wondering if we could get that clarified. And if there is some sort of savings happening to, get enough money for each of these projects, how does that work? And are you putting money aside each year for each of these projects? Is there a percentage each year that's being put aside so we can ensure that there's money for those warranted projects?
Kathy, I can start and you can clarify it. So we, in the budget book, we identify the projects that are sort of above the cutoff line, and we identify those that are receiving money just for the design portion so that they can advance through the design. We also identify which projects are receiving money for construction, and sometimes it may take multiple years to build up enough money for that particular construction project. So sometimes within that budget allocation that we're receiving, we want to continue moving forward some design projects. We don't want to sort of stall everything in the event of sometimes there may be additional funding sources that become available, like other levels of government stimulus programs and things like that. We want to have some design shovel ready sort of projects, but we also have to sort of build up our coffers for the construction. So we're all constantly sort of allocating towards all stages of multiple projects.
I guess it's the building up of the coffers that I'm looking for clarification on. So are there coffers currently that have money in it waiting to be spent on these intersections in rural areas?
Kathy, if you can correct me, but I believe that in the 2024 budget, there was some money that was put towards the construction of one of the intersections, but we recognize that it would need additional budget years as well to come up with the full construction value.
I see.
That's correct.
There would be some sort of costs center associated with that funding so that it can definitely be paired with the project that it's being saved.
Absolutely.
Okay. But you just have one of those, or is there multiple? Could you provide us with a list of those and how much is put aside for each of those projects now?
Maybe I could jump in, Heidi. I don't think we can't provide the lists at the moment, but that's something we could follow up with. But just to clarify, so this is the funding that we received to the new traffic control devices program. So for example, if we allocate a portion of the funding we receive within a particular year to a project such as Barnesdale and Rideau Valley, knowing that we won't have enough for construction within that year, but we'll have to allocate, for example, more funding out of the 2025 budget to go towards construction. So that's sort of what we're referring to, as well as the additional funds that we've already put aside through the Road Safety Action Plan, $3 million to contribute towards bringing the locations to construction. So we're referring to two different programs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Clark Kelly, and we're gonna move to Councillor Catherine Kirt.
And thank you, Chair. Please excuse my voice. I'm not sick, but I have some laryngitis or something. So yeah, thanks. I think this is an important conversation to have. I was happy to see one of the Ward 19 intersections that's on the list. It's been warranted for 7 years, is moving forward this year to detailed design. But what I think I'm hearing from you is that it's not necessarily that once detailed design is complete, that construction would happen in the year following. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, through you, Chair. Thank you. That's correct, Councillor Kitts.
And do you have like an average of how long it takes from the time detailed design is complete until you get shovels in the ground?
No, unfortunately, I don't have an average, as it varies from site to site, depending on a number of factors, which could include property requirements. So it would vary. It's very site specific.
Okay. And are there other funding opportunities that could be applied to this program that you could identify?
Thank you for the question, through you, Chair. Yes, we have identified through our Road Safety Action Plan under the intersections emphasis area, we are directing some of the funding to supplement our new traffic control devices program. And we see that funding growing over time.
And it's outside the Road Safety Action Plan. There's no other funding opportunities that you can think of?
Not at this time.
Chair, maybe I can add, in infrastructure services, we have a team that is monitoring provincial and federal government programs. So we have a stimulus team that is constantly looking at opportunities. So when we find programs where the scope allows us to build intersections, and we have done it in the past. You may recall the ICIP 2020. We build a lot of intersections with that program. We connect with our colleagues in traffic, and we provide the information so they can prioritize what are those intersections that we can apply for those programs. So while within the city, we may have some limitations based on what Ms. Kuroma explained, we are on ongoing monitoring of additional level of governments to be able to make use of those shovel-ready projects that we have because designs have been completed or are close to completion.
Okay. And typically when those opportunities present themselves, you do get input from councillors prior to submitting the packet. I know typically there's like a package that goes in on behalf of the city.
Thank you for the question, Chair. We normally have conversations with councillors. At the same time, we make sure that everybody understands that we are also following the priorities that the city has in place. So we wouldn't be adding projects that have not been identified in the city list. So projects that we usually apply, we use this program for, are projects that council is pretty familiar with because they are in the list of needs that are required coming up.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think it's important just from not to say to, reorganize the list per se, but from an awareness point of view, to just know that, these projects are top of mind and that we're leveraging sort of all the opportunities possible. But But I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Kit. Councillor Lowe.
Thanks, thanks, Chair. The most striking thing when you look at that list of warranted signal locations across the city, both rural and urban, is the fact that Eagleson and Llewellyn has been there since 2008, and there are other locations that have been there for, my math is bad, so 8-9 years now. So, you know, these locations have been there, and we know we've needed them for a long time. Whenever we get the warrants, whenever the assessment shows that the warrant is there, it takes a lot to undo it if you, let's say you don't want the stop sign there. It takes a lot, and then there's a whole legal thing, there's a whole litigation thing that comes up because it opens us up to a lot of risk. So in terms of these locations that have been there for, you know, Eagleson and Llewellyn's been there since I was in grade 11 in 2008. So in terms of places that have been there since 2008 and that get sort of pushed down by new places that are new locations that are prioritized, does that open up the city to any extra risk in terms of liabilities by continually pushing down a location in favor of another location?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Chair. I can provide some information related to the prioritization method that we use. So we've developed that method to prioritize the highest risk locations. So the way the locations are prioritized, we looked at the level of warrant criteria met following the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario traffic manual warrant criteria for the justification of traffic signals. Within that criteria, it looks at the minimum volume warrant as well as delays to cross street, which also considers pedestrian volumes. It looks at the collision experience at the intersection itself over a 3-year period. So the prioritization of signals looks at how high or how severe the conditions exist at each of the location and reprioritize based on that information. So by considering these factors, we're looking at areas that are the most risk to road users, including drivers, passengers, vulnerable road users. And of course, the rankings will fluctuate over time as conditions change and new data is collected. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Follow-up, I guess. I don't know if this committee works differently. I understand that, and the thing for me is like I've gotten the whole a good briefing from one of your colleagues before about the assessment process, and my understanding is every single location has a score 100% to be determined to be deemed, you know, warranted for a traffic signal. So within when every location is scored at 100%, like how does that then get prioritized? Like how is 100% at Eagleson Llewellyn different from 100% at Conroy and Davidson, let's say? And then second, the risk I was actually referring to was more so the risk of liability for having a location there for 16 years go unaddressed.
So in terms of the percentage warranted, so once a location reaches that 100%, it is on the list, but this is where we get into the various elements of the warrant criteria. So those can vary among the different sites. So one criteria could be higher or lower than another within that 100% warrant. That's why we've developed a system to be able to prioritize based on all the factors that contribute to that 100% ranking.
And then in terms of increased risk, in terms of liability for having a place get warranted for so long, is there any information on that?
I see Christine is online. Probably she can answer that question for you, Councillor.
Mr. Chair, I do apologize if you can't hear me. I am ill. There are a number of factors, Chair, that go into a determination of negligence and liability in terms of a traffic incident and standards. While it is not my area of expertise at this committee today, if you wish it, Chair, I can speak with our litigation team and we can provide a response to a more definitive response to the councillor's question prior to council, as well as looking at whether or not there have been any claims that were brought to the city that provided those allegations that the city was aware of a situation and did not take steps to correct it. Mr. Chair, if you want to give me that direction.
Thank you very much. Are you okay with that? So can we please have a direction to staff to come back to, not only to the council, if you come back to the whole committee, that will be good.
I will. Thank you, Chair.
I hope you feel better. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor, you're good? Thank you very much. I'm gonna move to Councillor Matthew Lulaf. He's with us online. Councillor Lulaf, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My questions originally were around liability as well. So thank you to Councillor Lowe for raising those, who was in grade 11 in 2008 while I was in Afghanistan. You're making me feel very old today, Councillor Lowe. What would be the total budget required to address the entire list of 100% warranted sites?
Hello, through you, Chair. Thank you for the question. We don't have that figure here today, but that's definitely something we can follow up on.
Please, if you don't mind, either via information distributed to the committee, that would be good to know. As I think
I could I'll just sort of supplement in the inquiry response, the original inquiry response, we did provide a very high level amount of approximately $65 million would be required for the warranted locations in the 19 warranted locations in the rural ward areas. And that was like I said, high level estimate in 2024 dollars.
And what is the typical year-over-year budget to address this list?
So the typical year-over-year budget was $2.7 million. And then in the last few years, we have also been supplementing that with funding from the Road Safety Action Plan with an additional $3 million from that program.
Given that the previous term of council had a direction to have an additional 1% tax levy to address transportation issues and infrastructure issues, was any portion of that allocated to this budget? Or was that simply road resurfacing, bridge maintenance, that sort of thing?
My understanding.
Okay. I think we're hearing some concern from the city. Perhaps we can talk offline about what the next budget submission looks like so that we can address some of this list. I'm looking forward to the return of the chair and Councillor Lowe's direction on liability, but this certainly seems to be a concern for all the members of this committee. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Roloff. Councillor Clark Kelly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just something one of my colleagues said in his line of questioning made me think about this just in terms of the assessment of the intersections and the risk, not liability risk, but risk to individuals using the road, and how that risk is calculated, because I know the likelihood of a collision may be greater at the corner of Carling and Woodruff. But the likelihood of death might be higher at the corner of Dunrobin and March. So because of the speeds that cars get up to in the rural areas, like you're statistically more likely to die in a collision in the rural wards. Is that factored into these decisions, or is it just the likelihood of there being a collision, or is the seriousness of that collision also factored into these decisions? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Chair. Yes, correct. That's correct. Those factors are considered in our prioritization process. We consider the roadway speed as well as the environment, whether it's rural or urban. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Definitely there is interest to have this conversation with the among not only the rural councillors citywide, and I'm sure the suburban and urban councillors will agree. I'm gonna have a question to where Councillor Kit started it, but the funding opportunity that we really keep talking about it, and probably this question to Karina on a high level. Some of the intersection, I understand, if we don't have shovel in the ground, we miss on opportunity. Am I correct on that?
Thank you for the question, Chair. Every program is different. So we have some programs fund from design throughout into construction. Some programs fund projects that are shovel ready, but we are not allowed to have the construction started. And some programs actually can be retroactive to construction. So it definitely depends on the type of program. And that's why we try to find the project that fits the best to maximize the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. And that's basically because if we don't spend the money on prepping and getting the warrant and getting the work on the details of the design. So probably the funding to get some extra or new money when we have available from federal or provincial government. And those are the project that we actually prepare for those funding. Is that correct?
Thank you for the follow-up question, Chair. Yes, historically, the programs tend to go to shovel ready. So having a list of projects ready to go for construction on the shelves, it's a good thing for the city. So the investment on a number of intersections so we can have designs ready to go, it's a wise thing based on the historical way of this funding opportunities to come to the city. We have seen, though, some projects that fund included the design and some that can be retroactive, but that's not the common.
Thank you. And why I'm asking all these questions, because I'm sure the councillors around here and lots of councillors listening to this, they're gonna start thinking about how we can really advance. And I looked at the number, and Heidi mentioned, like, those are $65 million in the rural, only in the rural intersection, and that's not even including or counting some of the challenge on the properties. So this is a very high level, and we know in the city when we project the project never coming on the construction never come on what we are projecting. So we understand and we know the number is very higher. But I think what this council is trying to do, they're trying to see if there is extra opportunity for new money or getting our project in line to see those high priority, and they're all priority, by the way, that I'm just talking some of those higher priority that have been waiting for years and years, how we can be able to move those construction faster. So that's basically what the whole conversation, and I think I do understand why my councillor colleague, but we appreciate you coming here this morning to clarify that, but we have lots of work ahead of us. Councillor Brown and I were discussing, this is maybe we have to move it to another discussion on another level with the finance and with the, of course, with the mayor's office, but we really appreciate you, Heidi and Kathy, being here to clarify and giving us different pictures. And we'll wait from Christine also for the some of the requests from the inquiry that Council will just put out, so we can have a better picture on what we have, what we need to do. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Okay, moving on to our presentation 5.1. We have Stephen Galibo here with us from the Rural Summit team to have a small presentation. I also want to mention that one of our resident that he sits on that board, Mr. Holmes, he's here also. Ken Holmes with us in the room. And before we go to the presentation, we have a small motion from Councillor Clark Kelly, so we can bring it into the agenda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee waive the rules of procedure, subsection 83, paragraph 4, section A, to receive the presentation from Planning, Real Estate, Economic Development Department, Natural Systems and Rural Affairs regarding an update on the Rural Summit at today's meeting, and dispense with the requirement to provide a separate written report on this presentation.
Okay,
Carried.
thank you. Stefan, the floor is yours. Thank you. You're good.
There we go. Thank you.
There we go. We got it going.
Took
Thank
a
you very
while,
much.
but we got it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee, for having me today. I'm here to make a presentation on the Rural Summit 2024. My name is Stefan Galpo. I'm a stakeholder engagement coordinator at the City of Ottawa. Next slide, please. So the City of Ottawa hosted a Rural Summit back in 2005 and 2008. At City Council meeting on December 14, 2002, Councillor Kelly presented a motion regarding the City of Ottawa hosting another Rural Summit in this term of council. He wanted to highlight the importance of addressing the needs of rural residents and communities, emphasizing the necessity of improving city services in rural Ottawa. So I'm happy to say today that we're going to have the Rural Summit this year in 2024. Our budget for the hosting for the whole year is $50,000. Next slide, please. The objective that we want for this Rural Summit, we want to recommend improvement in the City of Ottawa services for the rural residents. We want to take a look at the current services that they currently receive. We want to explore future plan, short-term, medium-term, and long-term. We also want to identify what are the opportunities for the rural residents. We have amazing rural communities. We want to look at opportunities that we can, what can we develop for them? And we also want to listen to them. We want to highlight challenges that needs to be addressed. So the targeted areas all our rural ward are ward number 1, 5, 19, 20, and 21. Next slide, please. The first thing we did this year was form a resident working group to help us organize and coordinate the Rural Summit for 2024. The resident working group was formed in in January of this year, and it's so it's 2 members of each rural ward, councillors, and city staff. And Mr. Chair, if I may, I would like to mention by name all the residents that are part of the resident working group. They've been of great help for us, and I want to make sure to mention them today. So from Ward 1, we have Yuri Lukmilis and Steve Lecomte. From Ward 5, we have Shirley Dolan and Ken Holmes, who is here with us today. Thanks you, Ken. From Ward 19, du quartier 19, nous avons Caroline Etter and Glenn Edwards. And from Ward 20, we have Chris Nguyen and Matt Nesrella. And from Ward 21, we have Wendy Eberwin and Megan Ann Gordon. So I want to say thank you to all those residents for being part. It's a lot of work. We had a lot of meetings to work on the survey that I'm going to talk about in the workshop, and they're going to help us all throughout the year on the resident work for organizing the Rural Summits. I want to say a big thank you to all those residents. Next slide, please. For the public engagement, where we're at. So in March 21st of this year, we've launched our survey to not only gather insight of rural communities, but also help us guide the teams of rural workshop that we're going to have to listen to residents. So we want to find out what are the main challenges that the residents are facing in rural areas. I'm happy to announce today that we have over, I know on the slide it says 300, but now this was in last week. So this morning, we're over 425 response on the surveys, which is excellent. So I want to say thank you to all the residents that have filled the survey, and it's still available on Engage Ottawa. So all those responses is going to help us guide the teams of the rural workshops that we're going to organize all throughout the spring. We're going to have workshop in each rural wards to gain as much feedback as possible from residents. We won't listen to them. That's why we're doing this. That's why we're having the survey. That's why we're doing this workshop. We're going to go to in person, and it's open to all the residents from those wards to attend and share with us what are the main challenges that they're facing in rural communities, and if they have potential solutions that they want to share with us. Next slide, please. I also want to mention that as of this week, we have launched our paper survey. That will also be available to all the residents. We understand sometimes internet might be an issue for some residents, so we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to answer the paper survey. As you can see on this slide, all the workshops that are going to happen all this spring. So we're starting with Ward 19 workshop that's going to happen next week, and we're going to finish all the way to June with Councillor Kelly's workshop on June 1st. So as you can see, we have workshops that are happening all throughout this spring, and that's just the beginning. We're going to go in person and meet with all the residents. But as you're going to see in the next slide, the timeline, the public engagement is going to continue past those workshops. Next slide, please. And all those workshops and the consultation and the outreach will lead to the Rural Summit 2024. The date we're aiming for November, as we understand that this would be the best time for the rural residents, as many of them are farmers, have agriculture. So we wanted to make sure that it's the best time for them. The purpose is not only to celebrate rural communities, but also we want to present what we heard and recommend improvement to the provision of the City of Ottawa services to residents and communities of rural Ottawa. So we're pretty excited about this, and I think it's going to be a big celebration, and we'll be excited to present not only to this committee, but also to the rest of council, everything that we heard from rural residents. Next slide, please. Now, just go over the timeline. It's going to be a pretty big year for rural Ottawa. So as you can see here, we're now on the survey launch, which was done in March. Then we're going to go our workshop that are going to happen from April to June, but that's not going to be the end of our public engagement. We want to go in your community. We want to listen to them. We understand there's a lot of fairs happening. There's a lot of events happening. Sometimes people cannot come to those workshops or answer the survey, but we want to make sure that we give them plenty of opportunity to share with us the challenges they might be facing. And then we're going to do this all throughout the summer, and then around September, and then our focus is going to turn to the Rural Summit that we're planning in November, and then we would report back ideally to committee and council in Q1 2025. And that's the end of my presentation.
I really thank you very much, Stefan, for the presentation and for the progress in the work. I think Councillor Kelly, Councillor Clark Kelly have a question, and then we'll move forward with the rest. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation, Stefan, and for your work on this file so far. Much appreciated. Right off the bat, you mentioned the budget of $50,000, and I know there's been some work done already, and there's been some printing. Could you give us an update on what's been spent so far and where that money has been spent?
Yes, absolutely. So like you mentioned, there's been some printing. The money So the printing has been the major thing for us that we spent for the Rural Summit. We're gonna have we have a budget set for each workshop. We want to make sure that our residents feel welcome, and at each workshop, we want to make them comfortable, and also some advertising that we're gonna do. Not only to promote the workshop, but also survey the Engage Ottawa site. So we have an advertising plan that has been put in place by Primer that to promote, and we're gonna spend more in the fall to promote the Rural Summit, and then we have a budget set for the Rural Summit as well. A big portion of the budget's going to go to the Rural Summit. That's going to happen in November.
Just based on spending so far, you're not concerned about the $50,000 budget?
Not at the moment, no.
I might be getting a bit ahead of myself here, but I'm already getting excited for what comes after all of this and the reporting and compiling the information and seeing what we heard. So I was wondering if someone could comment on the reporting process. I'd like to know who will be writing the report, how recommendations will be decided on. Is that going to be, you know, if we hear something 80 times and something 60, does the thing we heard 80 times get addressed and the thing we heard 60 times not? Just as an example. And when it comes to the drafting of the report, will there be a counselor role for counselors and the residents from the resident working group to have input before the report comes to committee and council?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I'm maybe going to turn to Nick regarding the report and the writing, but one thing I want to mention is we're going to create, as we heard, a report of everything we're going to hear from not only the workshops, but also for everything that that the residents are going to share with us. It's going to be fully transparent, and we're going to, everything that residents are going to mention, it's going to be available on not only on Engage Ottawa, but on the city website. So it's just we want to be fully transparent about everything we heard from residents.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. The Rural Affairs at the moment is identified for writing of the report, but as the committee has made very clear, this is a councillor-led initiative, and so in the drafting of that report, we will be taking our direction from council and from the residents working group. So the content will be coming directly from you and from the residents.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and Steph, thank you very much for coming out today. Just a moment to thank your team. It's a lot of work, and certainly the 10 residents that have come from our wards to come together to move this forward. It's very important. As Nick just said, this is councillor driven, and we rely heavily on our 10 residents that have formed our committee to make sure that rural Ottawa knows this isn't just a go away exercise. This is an honest opportunity for rural Ottawa to be heard, and this is an honest opportunity for them to provide valuable input so changes can be made to address the concerns that we have. Also, I think it's important to mention that if residents in any of the wards can't make their own ward meeting, they're certainly welcome at the other rural workshops. It's important that we get out there. This is one team. I know we say it often here, but it's true. It's one team, one rural Ottawa. And so it's important that residents have every opportunity to get out to a workshop, even if it isn't your workshop. So please come out. This is the honest opportunity to be heard, to make improvements that you want to see in rural Ottawa. And again, Steph, thank you very much for coming out today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Kit.
Thank you, Chair. Similarly, I just wanted to say thank you and commend Councillor Kelly for bringing this forward. I think this is a great initiative. I think it's very important for rural Ottawa, and it's been a really good experience so far. I know this is counselor driven, but it's resident led. And I want to thank the members of the working group. We've met frequently, I think, nearly every week. There's been good communication, good collaboration, and certainly Steph and your team, you've been very responsive. So I just wanted to take a moment to commend you. I think people in the community are excited about it. Navin's up first next Wednesday. So we're looking forward to setting the bar high. And as Councillor Brown said, everyone's welcome. So please come on out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kit. I don't want to repeat what my colleague, we really thank you. We appreciate the work that you yourself and the team and Nick Stows, and of course, he's been leading this project. I also don't want to forget to mention Charmaine Forgy, that she helped us kick off this summit. I know she retired and probably she's watching us from far away, but I do appreciate all the effort that staff that put together and of our residents that they've been participating. They've been committing to lots of time to have those meetings, and there's a lots of work is happening behind the scene, and very nice and comfortable to hear that we already have 400 answers on a survey, and we're looking forward for the engagement and the in-person meeting in every rural ward that been participating. And I'm hoping that we can participate in all of them together collectively and then listen and hear, like Councillor Brown mentioned and Councillor Kidd, this is a councillor driven, but we need the residents' input and we need them to drive this, because this is about rural policies and rural improvement in our rural area. I also want to thank Mayor Sutcliffe and his office been an amazingly involved and engaged in this process, and he's been very supportive of any initiative in rural area. I don't want to miss to give him thanks, because I know he's been, every time he sees us, he asks us about where's the progress and everything. And I know he's going to be engaged also in rural summit. So I want to mention that. So thank you very much this morning, and I really appreciate. We're hoping we'll have a great participation in our in-person, and hopefully you give us a report later too. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Seeing the question, thank you very much, Stefan. We're going to move to our 6.1. There is no motion here, but so we have our staff, Ryan, the amazing Ryan Thompson. He's back, and we're so happy to see you here back with us in the gallery. Ryan, you've been great help to us in the past years, and I know that we were so happy to see you back to the Rural Affairs Office. We do have a few report and application. We also have a delegation, but they're only here to sit and they have a question to answer. We have Luke Picknell from Navan Community Association. We also have Leslie Grieve from North Gore Garden. I think they are just here to have to answer any question from the committee. So I'll open the floor for the Councillor Kitt. You can go ahead and start.
Sure. I just wanted to make a quick comment. I realize that the grant for Navan is a little bit larger than we typically see come through this program. So I want to thank my colleagues for their support. This is an important project for Navan. It's going to have many uses, not only obviously for the ice rink, but for the Navan Fair Board is involved, the Agricultural Society is involved. I know the market is excited about it, and it's quite a costly project. So there's a lot of people coming together to make this happen, and obviously under the leadership of Luke Picknell. So I just wanted to say thanks in advance and acknowledge that this is a slightly larger request than we typically see.
Thank you, Councillor Kitt. Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And just a comment of thanks for the North Gore gardeners who are coming back to the table to continue to beautify North Gore. This is building on the good work they've already done. It's all volunteer done, volunteer driven. There's great community support. They go out and fundraise every year. And this is really what makes living in a village nice. You have volunteers who come together who take pride in their communities and they want to see a little bit more and a little bit better. And the application that's before us today, I don't think it's going to meet any resistance, but I just wanted to say thank you to Leslie and her team for coming together every year throughout the spring, summer, and fall to keep North Gore looking at its best. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I want to thank also Luke and Leslie. I know that working hard in the community and engaging with counselors and to apply to those rural grants is lots of work. So on behalf of the committee, we thank you. We thank you for your work in our communities in rural areas. Seeing no other questions, the recommendation that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee approve the recommendation on rural community building grants program application as detailed in document 1. Is that carried?
Carried.
Well, thank you. Congratulations to Luke and Leslie, and please pass on our the great work you do. We have no, are we done? Yeah. We have no open mic session. But we have Councillor Brown here. Number 10 is notice of motions. And how many you have? 6? So you can.
Only 2 today, Chair.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is a notice of motion for adjusting the inflation calculation for West River Drive sewer connection charges. Whereas sewer connection charges for certain properties on West River Drive are calculated based on Schedule A, Schedule 1 to Bylaw 2003-513. And whereas a portion of these charges includes consideration for inflation, and whereas inflation has significantly increased since the enactment of the relevant bylaw, and whereas the current high costs are in part a consequence of inflation rates in recent years, and whereas these high costs are prohibiting some residents from considering connecting, which diminishes recovery of construction costs, and whereas the city has already paid the full cost of the project back when the initial pipeline was constructed, and as such, a reduction in the inflation calculation would not negatively impact the city. Therefore, be it resolved that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend Council approve that Schedule A, Schedule 1 to Bylaw 2003-513 as enacted by Bylaw 2010-330 be amended to state all charges imposed or continued by this Schedule A shall be indexed annually on January 1st by the increase in Statistics Canada non-residential building construction price index for the preceding October 1 to September 30th period. Despite the provision immediately above for the years 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025, the indexing to take place on January 1st subsequent to each year shall be 2.59% for each of these years.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Your second notice of motion.
Thank you, Chair, and with the committee's indulgence, I'll just read the therefore be it resolves. Therefore, be it resolved that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend Council approve that if and when the Township of Beckwith implements a 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limit between Ashton Creek Crescent and Beckwith 9th Line Road, and on the southbound portion of Ashton Station Road, staff be directed to implement a similar speed limit change on the same road segment for northbound traffic on, Chair, on the southbound portion of Ashton Station Road, staff be directed to implement a similar speed limit change on the same road segment for northbound traffic on Ashton Station Road so as to bring the roadway into coherence. And be it further resolved that city staff be directed to monitor similar speed limit changes on segments of roadways that lead into the city of Ottawa or border the city of Ottawa, and where appropriate, provide notice to the ward councillor about such changes. And be it further resolved that where deemed appropriate in consultation with the ward councillor, staff exercise their delegated authority to ensure that speed limits at the boundary of the city of Ottawa are coherent with speed limits posted in neighboring municipalities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown, and those will be discussed in the future in the next meeting. I think Councillor Lowe have the inquiry to have it on the record. Do you have it ready, Councillor? I
guess I'll read this off my screen.
Just
here.
to have it on the record.
Yeah. So I guess that committee direct legal services staff to provide broad information about potential increased exposure to liabilities as a result of warranted locations remaining on the list for a very long time, and to look at whether or not there have been any claims brought to the city that provided allegations the city was aware of a situation and did not take steps to correct it. And that's in relation to the traffic signals inquiry.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. And then we have no inquiries. 12, we have no other business. Our next meeting is Thursday, May 2nd, 2024. And can I have a motion to adjourn at 11 o'clock?
Carried.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.